Welcome back. Now, finally, we have the conversation that we have been waiting for since 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m., depending on the time that you joined us for Biashara Tuesday. And we are asking, or we are rather talking about a very important conversation this morning that is on building better institutions and deepening democracy. This is especially in Africa. And this morning we are joined by Yuliso Makasi, who is a seasoned public sector leader. And just before I get into introducing her, I think she's best suited for introducing herself after being in this industry, her industry for over 2 decades. So, Makasi, good morning.
Good morning, Biashara. How are you?
We are fine.
Yes, thank you. I'm good too. Thank you.
Kindly, I would like for you to really give us a quick description of yourself, a quick introduction of yourself and what you do and your accomplishments so far as someone who has been in public service.
Wow. So my name is Yoliswa Makasi and I am a South African. And I have been in the public service for almost 30 years. And since I think just after democracy in South Africa, I started in 1997 as a public servant, and I've grown through different roles in the public sector. And my last role, which I finished a 5-year term at the end of February, was being a Director General in the Department of Public Service and Administration. And now I've stepped out of government and I work for a policy think tank, which is called the New South Institute, and I am responsible for the program as one of the programs, the program on public sector reforms, and I am the head of that program. So I've been a practitioner in public administration for almost 30 years. And I am also a scholar in a way. I am reading towards my doctorate now in administration as well. So that's broadly who I am. Thank you. In context to this interview and the role I play in South Africa.
Very interesting. Your accomplishments are quite interesting. And you have mentioned that you have worked in the public sector for about 30 years. So in relation to the conversation that we are having this morning, do you think that our public sector is really democratic based on the number of years that you have been in the sector?
Well, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of strides we have moved in Africa in terms of democratizing our institutions and the public sector. But I think also what we are also picking up in the systems is that the democracy is not necessarily an answer to our challenges. The challenges of unemployment, I heard you earlier on talking about an unemployment of young people. It's something that's happening in most African countries, if not all, in particular in South Africa, where I come from. So those challenges require more effort. Democracy alone is not going to give us those things. What is important is that more efforts must be given in ensuring that our economies grow so that they are able to absorb more people in the labor market, for instance. So I think there's space for democracy and the democratization of society, because that ensures participation of people in processes that are taking place in governance and etc. Those are important elements of democracy. So that's how I would answer that question, Biashara.
Very interesting. Now, there's a lot you've mentioned, that there's a lot that is we are supposed to be doing as Africa. I believe we are talking about Africa as a whole, not just South Africa and Kenya. But having the 2 countries on board, it can give us a brief overview of what is happening in Africa. Unemployment is a major challenge both in Africa and in South Africa and Kenya, and in Africa at large. So how well can we build better institutions in order to deepen democracy? How can we do this as Africa?
Well, I mean, I think that part of building institutions, you would have seen in a number of our countries that one of the biggest challenges is issues around governance, issues around corruption, and that leads to flow of resources that could be assisting to deal with some of the challenges through such as unemployment and etc. But those resources are unaccounted for due to corruption and etc. So it's important that when we think about building our institutions, we think about how we strengthen governance, so that our institutions become ethical and the people who are running those institutions are ethical in terms of ensuring that the institutions are resilient themselves, but also the capacity that we build, the human resource capacity in those institutions in government. Remember, government jobs are like lifetime jobs. So whether a person is performing or is productive or not, they stay forever in government jobs. So how do we then ensure that we have robust systems that are in place that are aimed at building the capacity of our state and building the institutions so that they can be able to deliver and focus on issues that are related to people? In South Africa, we have this program called Professionalization of the Public Sector. It's a program that we are also supporting as the New South Institute, where government has taken a step to professionalize the public sector and looking at a number of things that they are doing. There is a framework that they've approved in October 2022 called the Professionalization Framework, and it gives a number of steps in terms of just how you strengthen your human resource processes as a first point, and how you strengthen the interaction between politicians and public administrators to ensure that there's stability at that level. So the New South Institute is very involved in that work and is supporting that work. The third issue I think I want to raise around building our resilience in our institutions and strengthening our institutions is creating opportunities to bring in young people in the public sector. Tomorrow we are actually releasing a report which as New South Institute we have been working on for the past few months, that looks at the past 15 years and what are the trends in terms of the aging of people in the public service in South Africa. We'll be releasing that report, but it's showing that the numbers of younger people in government are declining and the numbers of older people are increasing. So if you think about agility, when you think about service delivery, when you think about police, for instance, you need police to run on the streets and to be agile. If you have a majority of them 50 years and above, they are not going to be able to do that in an efficient manner. If you think about digital technologies, digitizing your policing, digitizing your public service, young people stand a much more better chance. They are capable to do that because they are digital natives. My children and people who are slightly older than them are much more good in technology than I am because they've grown up in technology. So they are able to adapt much more faster on technological platforms. So we have to create those spaces for young people to get into the public service as part of building these institutions and resilience in our institutions. Thank you.
Now that we are talking about the young people being involved in the public service sector, last year at around June we had demonstrations random in Kenya and South Africa also, though for Kenya turned really chaotic, and all this it was a demand for accountability for the government, and most reasons were because the young people were complaining of high cost of living and tough economic times, others complaining of lack of employment. And you have just mentioned a very important aspect, that most of our population, that is the working class, are of the old generation. And that brings us to a question on the merits of someone to be in that space as a public servant. How is it in South Africa and how can we compare it to Kenya? That is the qualifications for someone to get into an office position, and for someone to lose their job, it's either at the end of the contract or the retirement age. For Kenya, it is at 60 years. That is the retirement age for Kenya. But we have seen several people turning their ages or backdating their age. And how can our institutions, especially Kenya and South Africa and Africa at large, come up with ways of harnessing these challenges, like people backdating their ages so that they can stay in office or in their positions for longer time, involving the youth in these spaces where their voices can be heard, and incorporating them in the sector. How different can Africa at large do to ensure that the young people are really given these opportunities without so much hardships?
So I think the first thing is that the issue around changing ages and etc. again relates to this point on corruption I was raising earlier on, and the lack of ethics, both from the system, those who are working in government and those who are outside government, which is the communities that want the service. So government has to strengthen its systems, and I believe that technology plays a critical role in strengthening our systems and improving accountability. And I know that Kenya is one of those countries that have really taken, invested in its technology, and has really improved in terms of the digital transformation. Some of the stuff we read about Kenya in relation to digital transformation. And I do hope that young people are driving those processes even there in Kenya in respect to that. I think the second issue is that not everybody who is working in government wants to stay until they are 60 or 65. So in South Africa, the retirement age is 65. So not everyone wants to stay until they are 65. I think some people, once they hit 55, once they hit 50 or 60, between 55 and 60, they start thinking about leaving because of maybe health issues, they are tired, they want to spend more time with family, with grandchildren, and etc. So the system must be able to allow those who want to exit earlier to exit. One of the reasons why people stay longer in the system, it's because they will get penalized. I don't know how the system works in Kenya, but in South Africa, you are likely to be penalized if you retire before your retirement age, or before a certain period within your retirement age. So people basically stay and are not productive simply because they're waiting to retire. And that is a big problem. So, and also remember that older people in the system, they would have occupied their jobs for a longer time, and they're expensive to maintain in terms of salaries. And yet when newer people come in, they start at the entry level in terms of salaries. From a qualifications point of view, in South Africa, we have a system where for the different roles in the public service that you have to work at, or in government, there are different qualification requirements that you require to get into that. And I think that the system over years has tightened so much that it's not so easy to get into government without that required qualification. We've had cases where allegations of people faking qualifications, and our laws are very clear. If you have been caught faking a qualification, that's like a criminal offense, and you can immediately be released from your work, and you will be disciplined as well in respect to that, because that is a huge that's fraud, and it's a big issue here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, earlier on, we have mentioned that for us to build effective public institutions, that is building better institutions so that we can deepen our democracy, one of the ways is to ensure that we have effective public participation. I don't know how it is for South Africa, but for Kenya, we have public participation, but it's based on sectors or heads of different sectors coming together and voicing their opinions, whether it's on finance bill, whether it's on bills that are to be passed by parliament. So we have these sectors coming together for public participation, and there's also Bunge la Wananchi here in the country for us. I don't know how it is like in South Africa, but how effective do you think public participation is in terms of ensuring that there is a democracy in Africa? And how sustainable is it? Because all this requires finances, and sometimes it might be difficult to finance. How is it effective, and how sustainable can this be?
Well, in South Africa as well, I mean, as a democracy, we have our parliament, and all the bills or legislation that go through parliament have to go through a public participation, and that process starts even before you go to parliament. As a department, in a government department is working on legislation or policy, we have to ensure that there's public participation. There's various ways to do this. You can do consultations directly with people physically. You can do them virtually. You can also use government gazetting. It's a compulsory step you must issue it on a government gazette so that those who want to write written submissions can do so. So you're asking a question about sustainability. I've just recently been participating in public hearings for the Service Amendment Bill, which is about public sector reforms in South Africa, as part of my role at the New South Institute. And I've made a number of observations around public participation now, because I was participating as a member of civil society, not as somebody from government who's going there to present and to tell people what we've been doing and etc. So as a member of civil society, and I do want to say that I think we need to invest more to get the right people to be part of these processes in respect to the type of legislation or whatever that is being discussed at the particular time. And I think we can also invest more to make use of technology, but we cannot rely on technology alone, because we have communities that are quite rural in South Africa, and I think it's the same with Kenya, where you need a physical engagement. So you can't take everything on technology, but people are still attending these hearings or these participation forums and are raising their views and are making inputs into the processes. So I think that's the good thing about democracy. But from a quality perspective, I think more needs to be done to ensure that what comes out of those public participation processes really is something that is useful for the process of a particular legislation. So it's not just people coming together and some don't even have a clue or don't understand what's going on, why they are here, but ultimately there are these decisions that have to be taken that relates to participation. Sustainability, yes, I think it's costly. I mean, I've seen here in South Africa that the legislature, when these hearings are taking place, like in our provinces, subnational institutions, that the legislature must provides transport to bring the people and provides food as well for the people. And so that is a good investment, as long as you get the people who are knowledgeable on the subject. And if they are not knowledgeable, as long as you invest first on preparing them so that they understand what is going on and what is being discussed through educational awareness and etc. So, and I don't think this is a critical component of our democracy, public participation, and it should never be too expensive not to be able to afford it. We probably have to look at other things to cut if really there's an affordability issue, but participation of people in democratic processes is a very crucial step in instilling and enhancing our democracy.
Mm-hmm. And do you think this is effective? Because if we look at a combination of communist ideology and a capitalist style, where they have one party which makes decisions for the country. China has really developed at of the communist nature of its governance, despite the fact that it has the capitalist style where the members of the public are allowed to own different. Development has been fast-paced compared to Kenya or compared to Africa, where we consider ourselves to be democratic. Do you think that it is effective having public participation, or the idea of being a democratic country, is it effective in terms of economic progress?
Well, I mean, I think it is. I think the issue is really around culture. Every time people do a comparison with China, and I always say I think we must look at a number of things around how business is done in China and how business is done in Africa. Sometimes we lose on opportunities simply because of our turnaround times. It will take 3 months to approve something that is so basic to enable a business to be able to set up in a country. In some of our countries, in China, perhaps that's something they can do over 2 days. So the agility of our systems is very important. That is embedded in the culture. So I definitely like the culture of doing business in China, but also from a democracy point of view, I don't think the challenge is democratic participation. I think the challenge is issues related to ethics, issues related to our systems and how our systems are enabling agility and better delivery of services, issues related to corruption amongst others. So I think if we can fix those people and just improve our turnaround times and our agility, we should be able and improve our culture of doing business. We should be able to really improve on certain things. And some of the issues with the economy are really structural issues that require a lot of work and require a lot of reforms. And I think our countries really try to put in place so many reforms to ensure that our economy performs better. But we are part of a global economy. I mean, as you know, what happens in Russia or Ukraine affects us in South Africa, affects you in Kenya, because of the global supply chain processes and and the trading relations that takes place amongst countries. So it's quite a complex system, but more importantly is, as complex as it is, I think also there are things that we can improve in how we engage with the system, from our own culture and our own way of doing things.
And how best can we do these improvements, I mean, based on our culture, so that we don't feel like we are forced into quick progress, because these countries took hundreds of years to reach where they are. So as Africa, how best can we do this based on our cultures and our way of life?
Well, I mean, I think that when I talk about culture in this context, I'm talking about the business culture that we have in our systems. So I think that for me, use of technology, agility, moving fast with things, moving fast with decision making, ensuring that you have the right people to do the work, which means the right people who possess the relevant competencies and who possess the relevant qualifications to be able to drive, and ensuring that, especially if you think about government, you hold public servants accountable for productivity, and you have performance management system in place that ensures that those who are productive and perform continue, and those who are not willing to work are released from the system, so that we can be able to bring in people who can work in the system. So for me, those are some of the practical things that we should be doing to ensure that we improve from where we are to the next levels, and do away with processes that are not working for us, in terms of moving things faster, in terms of ensuring participation of the various stakeholders, and etc.
Now, that is very much in order, but looking at African countries, it is very hard to separate politics and governance. That is when our leaders are really into our governance part, focusing mostly on politics more than how they govern our countries. And this has led to our decisions as African countries is majorly based on politics. When it comes to development projects and all this, they're based on how politics run, how allies of the government receive larger shares and all that, how positions in government are rewarded to government allies or those who sponsored the regimes in power. So this has often led to voter apathy, where most people think that we don't need to even vote, we don't need to do much because the leaders or those in power will have their way. So how can Africa as a country deal with this upcoming issue of voter apathy, where they don't have trust in government?
Well, I mean, I think that firstly, we need to rely on evidence in decision making. So I indicated to you earlier on that the New South Institute is issuing a report tomorrow on the aging public service. And one of the reasons we have decided to work on that report is exactly evidence-based, in the sense that we are saying that there is this talk about professionalization, there is all these efforts that are being taken to professionalize, but what is the evidence? What is the evidence telling us, and what can government learn from this evidence and stakeholders learn from this evidence? So evidence-based decision making and evidence-based public policy making is very, very important in terms of taking this work forward. The issue of voter apathy amongst young people, I mean, I think that young people are interested in politics. And I think that political parties therefore have a responsibility to ensure that there is active participation of young people, because the political parties are the ones that participate in elections. The fact that so many young people in Kenya were on the streets and raising issues that have to do with their lives. So many people in South Africa, from time to time, young people are on the streets, and other countries in Africa, shows their interest in politics, shows that they are frustrated about how the system is. And therefore, there must be a system of listening to these young people, so that they are attracted into the system of politics, and they are able to participate. And remember, participating in politics is not just about voting. Young people must occupy their rightful place even in political parties. We are seeing more and more in Africa younger people coming into leadership positions, and they inspire the other younger people as well to be able to step into those positions. Lastly, one of the things I said earlier on, we are participating in a legislation a review process, which is currently in the National Council of Provinces in Parliament. And one of the issues we are raising in that legislative process for the Public Service Amendment Bill is the importance of separating the roles of heads of departments from the roles of politicians who are ministers or at provincial levels, MECs and etc. To answer exactly the question that you are raising, the interface between politics and administration, it's very important that those roles are clear. It's clear that this is where, as a head of department, I operate, and this is where, as a minister, I operate, and this is where our operating interfaces, the two of us, because you want to avoid political interference in administration, in running administration, and you want to deal with some of the challenges of instructions that may not necessarily be instructions that are taking forward the work of government, but also politics in their nature. They are very short-termist, in the sense that politics, when a politician steps in, they have a 5-year period, and they want to deliver everything in 5 years, so everything is urgent. And yet administration is what continues and sustains even some of these interventions, and ensures that programs should be continuing even when one politician has left and another one has come, or one administration has left or another one has come, or one political party that has been leading has now exited and another political party has come into government. So it's important that there is clarity about those roles and responsibility. There's clarity about accountability. There's also clarity about the work that must be done on building integrity, on building ethics within the system itself.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are these programs that are upcoming at that is South Institute, and that is New South Institute, and these programs are meant to shape the public service, and it includes submissions for NSI fellowship in public service and scholar programs. So could you please talk to us about these programs and how they are going to shape the future of public service, especially in Africa?
This is a program that excites me a lot, where we are basically putting together a fellowship in public service reforms for public servants, and the second one is the Young Scholar Program. This is targeting young people who are institutions of higher learning in Africa, who are doing final year as well as maybe postgraduate, and we want to support them work with them around their research on reform areas, in various areas of reforms. It doesn't matter if a person is studying like the program they are studying within public administration, you may be specializing, or public management and public policy, you may be specializing in an area in health, you may be specializing in an area in local government. We are keen to receive those applications and work with the young people. The one of the fellowship as well, the fellowship for public sector, we are looking at young people, at people who are public servants, not young people, people who are public servants who are involved in policy implementation and policy development. And we want to work with them around, again, supporting their work in terms of public sector reforms where they are working, and supporting their capacity to deliver on this particular work. Because we've also seen that public sector reforms need to be supported. Hence, we want to work with public servants who are in the system in some of our African governments. We also want to work with young people who are in universities, because there is always space for research, there's space for developing case studies, there's space for evidence-based type of research in this particular area. So it is an open call, even for those young people who might be in Kenya and also asking who meet the requirements. We're really looking forward to get those applications.
Very interesting. Now, just still on the same programs that are at New South Institute, there is you are a champion of mentorship, especially which includes youth empowerment, women empowerment, and leadership development. And you're also part of, you pushed for rights of the LGBT community, especially in the police service or in the prison service. So how do you consider mentorship to be in terms of civic education and empowering upcoming public servants?
Well, mentorship is very important. So I always talk about mentorship and about coaching, because those are very important to help young people as they grow up in their careers or in their different areas that they've decided to focus on. So typically a mentor is that person who has walked the road that you are, or who has walked the path that you are trying to walk in as a young person, and therefore has experiences and wisdom from a technical perspective around that particular area. So for instance, yourself, you are in the space of presenting this show, and you are a young person, or should I say you are looking young. And there's people who have walked this path before you. So being able to tap into them from time to time to understand, how do I deal with this when I have a difficult person that I'm interviewing, how do I deal with it, and etc. So that's mentorship. Then coaching is when really you have decided that, I want to get to the next level of my life, and I want to explore other things, certain things, even beyond what I'm doing, or I want to sharpen what I'm doing. So you get a coach to handhold you, to support you, to guide. The coach doesn't have to be somebody who has been a TV presenter before. The coach can be anybody who has gone through a training program to be a coach and accredited or recognized as a coach. So those are some of the very useful resources to have as a young person, to help guide you and support you to the next level. So many programs, many institutions do integrate these in some of their activities. So when the programs I've spoken about at NSI, the fellowship and the young scholar, we are definitely looking at mentoring these young people, linking them up with relevant people as mentors, as well as coaching and hand-holding and guiding them, because coaching is very critical for leadership development. So that, and you would know, leadership development is very critical as you rise into different roles and responsibilities. You are required to be a leader and to show capabilities of being a leader. So those are also some of the value add in terms of this program that you are going to be bringing in.
Could you please mention to us success stories of previous programs and fellowship programs that New South Institute has had those people who came out as graduates, or should we call them as people who have undergone the training and mentorship program? Are there success stories that you can mention?
So this program, we are implementing it for the first time. It's a new program, but I can tell you that the New South Institute has a system of research fellows. So we've got quite a substantial number of our people in our database who are research fellows, who get to write different papers or do research on various areas of work that we work in. But those would typically be people who are researchers, and so we're also looking at these people to be able to mentor the young scholars, because the young scholars who are interested in research already, we have capacity in terms of research fellows that we have as an institution.
Mm-hmm. And now, as we bring this home, what lessons, you have been in the sector for a number of years in South Africa, you have studied in various universities in the UK and across Africa and even beyond, so you have a vast knowledge of various, how public service works in different countries. So from that, how can Kenya learn from South Africa? What lessons does South Africa has for Kenyans so that it can improve its public service delivery?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a case of Kenya learning from South Africa. I think it's a case of Kenya and South Africa sharing experiences and learning from each other. There are areas where Kenya is doing well, and one of those areas, in my understanding, is exactly what I spoke earlier about: digital transformation. And there are areas where perhaps in South Africa we are doing well. I think that there's lots of efforts that is being put on professionalizing the public service. There's lots of efforts that is being put on thinking about how to deal with issues of young people. These are complex issues, but at least there's thinking around those issues. I think we can share notes, we can share experiences, and we can see how we move forward in respect to that. But I wouldn't bring an approach that says Kenya come and learn from South Africa. I think that South Africa must learn from Kenya and Kenya must learn from South Africa. We must share those experiences and insights.
It is a win-win situation for both countries. A country learning from another. And are there lessons from across, apart from Kenya and South Africa, that is from beyond maybe developed countries that you've interacted with, that the two countries can learn from?
In fact, as I'm thinking, one of the things I think South Africa can learn from Kenya, if you're thinking about this issue of, we were talking earlier on about the political, we're talking about professionalization, and I was looking at how Kenya has attempted to professionalize the political space in terms of the people who come into government in Kenya from a political point of view, that there's a basic requirement of qualifications at a certain level. To be a minister, you need to have a certain level of qualification and etc. And I think those are some of the things that even South Africa should be learning from Kenya, because I think for us in our country, for politicians, it's like a free-for-all of some sort. So and I think there's various models in various countries. I've been reading a lot about international models. One of our research fellows at the New South Institute is currently in Germany and is doing a fellowship, and has also been a fellowship and is looking at public sector reforms, and has been sharing a lot of information around some of the models that being looked at in various countries around public sector reforms. For instance, the system in Germany, the system in France, and other systems in global South countries like your countries in South America and etc. So I think that there is so much to learn, but we just need to be very intentional and be very present about what we need to know and how we get it.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking forward, what innovations or reforms do you think Africa should embrace in order to come up with a better or more evolved public service sector, more evolved public institutions, and a deepened or a widened democracy?
I think that firstly is we must get the right people into our government institutions. So meritocracy is important. recruiting the right people with the right competence is very important. And of course, each country will define what that competence is. So that's the first issue for me. The second issue is reviewing our own processes in our institutions to ensure that they enable this agility that we're talking about, but also bringing in technology, digital transformation, bringing in technology to improve accountability, to improve service delivery time, turnaround times, and to improve governance. I think the third issue is really working with public servants and building on their values. So in South Africa, for instance, we have our constitution, which is very clear on values for the public sector, values and principles for the public sector. If efficiency, being professional, justice and fairness and equality, all those noble ideas. But how do we then ensure that the public servants that we employ into the system align with these values? They live the values of the Constitution, because then the issues about integrity, the issues about ethics can immediately be addressed if you look at that. So we need to have those type of programs that continuously remind our people in the public service and supports them to live these values. So you have to translate those values into day-to-day activities of people in the system.
Thank you so much. Now, as we bring this to an end, do you have any last words for our viewers back at home in Kenya and in South Africa?
Well, I just want to appreciate the opportunity to share, and I hope that people will be able to they've been able to pick up something. But just to say that young people in particular, we must not give up, or they must not give up. I'm no longer young anymore, but young people must not give up. They have to continue to fight for a life that is better, and to hold governments accountable to deliver on that life, and also hold private sector accountable, because it is private sector that develops, that is responsible for job creation. Of course, the government must provide that environment for job creation. So let's put the system under pressure as young people to ensure that it delivers for us, and let's get involved. Let's participate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Makasi, for making time for us from Johannesburg. I know it is a little earlier for you in South Africa, but we thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Now, to our viewers back at home, it is an interesting opportunity for you, especially for the young people, to make haste and get the opportunities. That is a submission for the NSI Fellowship Program in Public Service Reform and the NSI Young Scholar Programs 2025. That is, there is a call for submission. So if you're a young person, you have the opportunity to make an impact, or to be part of the change, especially in your country, wherever you are in Africa. So you can be part of this, and this is by making your submission and trying to find a way of finding a balance of how you can incorporate your views in your country, or your views from wherever you are, and make a change. It's not just about going to streets, but you can also be part of the research program. That is a discussion on building better institution and deepening democracy with the Yoliso Makasu from Johannesburg, who is the head, who is the head of public service reforms programs at New South Institute in South Africa. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion on the launch. Now, coming up next is a discussion on the state of our nation, that is the newspaper review, and we'll be joined by Ojwang Mariam and Emmanuel Kutosi, all from this